Welcome to Radio Hard tonight as we count one, two, three Salem Lot movies, starting with the first one. Technically four, but we're not covering Return to Salem's Lot just because we're not doing that. But this is the original Tobe Hooper made-for-TV movie, internationally in theaters movie, starring David Soul, best known as coming right off of a hit cop show called Starsky and Hutch, which is what most people will know him from, which is pretty funny. I think he was in at a couple conventions near me once or twice, and it's kind of sad that I didn't have a chance to meet him, or I kind of forgot that he was the lead actor of this movie. But this is based on the Stephen King novel. This is, I think, the second or third Stephen King book, right? Like behind The Shining and Carrie.
This was before The Shining. The Shining
Oh,
was 1980. Are you talking about the book coming
the
out or the
books,
adaptation?
the books.
I don't know the timeline of the books, but I know as far as being made onto a big screen or small screen project, this was the numbers. This is the second one.
Okay, so Carrie was the first. I believe this was the second one.
This
Uh,
is the second one.
This is a this was a book, an audiobook that I listened to on my way to Vermont to go visit the sets of Beetlejuice in 2020, and I had not read the book in such a long time. I forgot how drawn out the book is, and in the this film they definitely cut a lot out of it, and we'll get to see as we watch these three in a row how they progress to make it more like the book and changing things from the book and taking stuff that wasn't in the previous version they want in this version from the book. It's also kind of funny is this is set in the 1970s. And the next one we talk about is in the 2000s, and then we come back to the 70s in October with the remake. So it kind of comes weirdly full circle. But we're going to talk about Salem's Lot, the original, the two-parter or 3 hour version.
Yeah, directed by Tobe Hooper, and you can definitely see a lot of that in the production design, especially when you get to the Marston house. David Soul plays, well, it starts out 2 years prior to where we start, where Ben Mears and Mark Petrie are in a church. They're in Guatemala. You don't, it's like, and for everyone, as Chris said, this is a teleplay. This was on television. So this is a key reason why a number of the generation of Gen X have major anxiety and core horror moments, because this is some scary freaking stuff that is in this film. Mainly a lot of it with this guy. But yeah, Ben and Mark are in Guatemala. They're disheveled, they're dirty. We don't know exactly what's going on. And then it fast forward to 2 years in Salem's Lot, Maine. One of the things, though, I love about this is that as soon as they get done, you know something's going to go on with these characters, with Mark and Ben. They show a full moon and then the howl of a wolf or a dog or coyote, and then this image of a house, and then Salem's Lot in purple. And the music that goes along with that while they're going through the players in the cast is very reminiscent to all the disaster movies that came out in the 70s and a little bit of Airplane. If you don't know that, when you rewatch it, you definitely will. This essentially is a haunted house movie, because like with certain films, you could say other things came about it, but the fact is, if this didn't have the Marston house, none of this would have happened. And that was something, after rewatching it, I really leaned into and looked upon, and I was like, this is essentially a haunted house movie, because there are many things about that house that evil just kept brewing and brewing and brewing until the certain characters came along. And Ben Mears, David Soul, is there to do a book about the Marston house. His aunt worked there. Kind of crazy that she worked there when, one of the creepy characters worked there. And he left 20 something years ago. and you know, he's the new man in town. It's definitely, when you get into the film, it's definitely has that, you know, Peyton Place, if you don't know that book about a small town and all the rumors that go around with it and all that stuff, where, you know, you leave your doors open, but you also should keep your mouth shut because there's a lot of rumors that can spread around. And then a little, you know, and then mix of Nosferatu. The film goes along with Ben introducing us to people. I mean, within 2 nights, we have Ben getting a date, kind of getting laid. And then the next night, at least 2 people are dead. One that we definitely know of, one is missing, and then one has some weird form of anemia. Um, it seems like that is fast paced, but this is within an hour of you don't actually see anything creepy until an hour into the film. And that is one of the things I want to say about one, the writing of the book, but also Toby Hooper and making this. I mean, it's so, the atmosphere in this is like, you kind of can relate to these small town folks. You understand that they're, you know, like, who are you? There's only 2013 people. I took note of that. 2013 people in Salem's Lot. So, I mean, everybody knows each other and they've known each other probably for way, way, way too long. Also, I got to give it up to Susan. What is her name? Sorry. Bonnie Bedelia as Susan Norton. Good for you, being a woman who's all about sexual liberation and going for it. Because let me tell you, in the teleplay, you go from, they meet, Ben and Susan meet within 5 minutes or less. He's already asking her on a date. They get to making out or doing more that night, probably even more the next night. By the next night, he's telling her she's going to possibly get a job in Boston and maybe they can do long distance. I'm like, what is going on in the 1970s in Maine that it's like, damn, you guys are just going full force in this relationship. You've known each other for 3 days and it's already, we possibly have a long distance relationship. Good for you. Way to go. Poor Ben knows something is going on with the Marston house, yet no one believes him. This weird guy named Straker has moved in there with his business partner Barlow, who's going to be coming in very soon. Straker, by the way, who is played by James Mason. And honestly, when the two of them, Ben Mears and James Mason, lock eyes in the first few minutes of the film, it's just so intense without anything being said. And even the second time when they see each other, which is actually one of the first jump scares in the film, when they see each other and then just the intensity and all he says is good evening, and that's James Mason. He's just so smooth in this film. You know he's got to be evil. You know he's bad. And yet he, with his English accent, he is just so smooth in this that it's like, yeah, I'm going to go along with it. It's another thing in this film too, that there's just such like little small things. Like, you see, there's a whole sequence of James Mason parking and then going in reverse, and they have that camera like in the car. Why would they do that? And yet I love it. I don't know why. It's so dumb. But the thing is that the jump scares in this film honestly are core horror moments for any child growing up in the 70s and the 80s when they would replay this. You've got as I said, the one with Straker meeting up with Ben Mears. You've got this guy who beats up Ben Mears. He's in jail. He's just sitting there. He all of a sudden the door opens up, something comes in, and then you see the face of Barlow, which to this day, honestly, mwah, chef's kiss, amazing. But before that, you have the core horror film, the core memories of the Glick Boys, which the Glick Boys, they got bit by Barlow because Barlow, spoiler, is a vampire. You obviously, we all know you can't get invited in. You can't come in unless they're invited. Someone always invites, almost someone invites the Glick Boys in. And when they're like tapping on without saying anything when they're tapping on the window and they let them in. They're like flying, which was a crane, not wires, by the way, with this beautiful fog and smoke behind them. That to this day, like I remember reading this book in Montana, and when the branches hit a window, I seriously almost pissed myself. Like I saw this teleplay when I was far too young, single digits when it came out. I read the book in my teenage years, and it still holds up, both of them. Um, Even like when Danny Glick is in the ground and he like raises up, they don't do much. There's not a lot of effects with the people who have been bitten or bitten then bitten, you know, like a virus from Barlow, but it's like they do this like weird stuff with the eyes and then making sure, you know, the vampire teeth aren't great and just slight discoloration with the skin. It doesn't take much, but my God, is it effective? Uh, as the film goes on, we know that more and more people are being bit. More and more people are still not believing Ben Mears or Mark Petrie because Mark has been, you know, his friend came up to him, which I also have to say after watching this, Mark Petrie, I will declare, has the biggest child's bedroom I've ever seen in a film, teleplay, or film in my life. Like, it does not make sense why he has like a giant master bedroom, especially when his parents are definitely considering him going somewhere because they think he's weird because he's so into like special effects and like creature features and stuff like that. It's like not necessarily great parenting for this day or even the 70s. And, you know, unfortunately, they meet a not great demise. The film says a lot about religion. It says a lot about small town gossip, and you know, maybe if somebody had believed Ben or something like that, all this wouldn't have happened. But I, to this day, it's 45 years old. It stands up with any vampire film. I love how they have like that. And I mean, if you've seen, they did certain aspects of Nosferatu and many ancient vampires to look like Barlow. However, the look of Barlow has definitely influenced other films like What We Do in the Shadows and The Strain, not to mention many, many others. David Soul, you know, just after Starsky and Hutch was A Dreamy Dream. There's a lot of character actors in here: George Zunza, Fred Willard, Bonnie Bedelia, who's been on so many shows and movies, A Heart Like a Wheel. So, I mean, the cast just is stacks up. Do they have a number of people who just kind of like make an appearance and then disappear and we never see them ever again? Not even in a nefarious way. Yeah. At the same time, it's fine. It's not like they were like central to the storyline or anything like that. It's just kind of weird in the continuity aspect of the film. Uh, I am definitely looking forward to this new 2024 version. I'm definitely looking forward to talking about the one from TNT with Rob Lowe with Chris after this episode, because I like the differences that these two had. I know in the book that Barlow actually spoke, but I know that Stephen King, when he saw this teleplay, he loved it. He liked what the actual changes they did to the character, and so do I. Because the main thing is that, I don't know, it's scarier when the monster doesn't have like, you don't have that voice or something like that. You just have the look, and you know that he's just pure evil. James Mason, outstanding as Straker. Mark Petrie, great job. Or Lance Kerwin, awesome job. And yeah, I mean, there's not a member of the cast, honestly, that doesn't hold up to what this is. Jeffrey Lewis still has a key point in, you know, core horror when you hear him say teacher and stuff like that. Like, that still is pretty freaky and frightening. But this is a great teleplay, and I mean, it's again a teleplay. This was on television, so everyone could see it. this is the kind of stuff that they made for the 70s and 80s. I mean, and I thought about that, and I was actually describing that, mentioning that to somebody else. Between this, it, and The Stand, I mean, Stephen King's teleplays really are some frightening shit that have like scarred multiple generations into petrified people from different aspects of just core memories of television, when people would actually watch. Like, this was an event. People don't realize that, like, it used to be a thing. It's not like you could just binge it. Like, this was 2 episodes, so it's like 2 or 3 hours each episode, something like that. So it ends up being like 3 hours to over 3 hours total. And this was a thing that people are like get excited about. I think they did one on one Sunday and the last episode on the opposite Sunday. So that means you had a week to discuss it and then build it up. That is something that just doesn't happen anymore. It's sad because I wish it did, because it brings a lot of people together to discuss it. But yeah, if you have not seen this, I recommend watching it on Shudder. Honestly, again, it holds up 1979. It's a slow burn and worth it, because then when it starts going, it is blazing.
This film, there's some interesting explanations about why certain things are a little bit different from the book. One of the things is Barlow. Yeah, in the book, keep saying comic. The book, he's more of a Maccabean kind of vampire. In this one, he's Nosferatu vampire. I thought I read somewhere in an old Fangoria article, and I couldn't find it online. They changed it to more of a Nosferatu because they had just done Werner Herzog had just done the remake of Nosferatu. So the Nosferatu vampire was very popular at the time. So they wanted to do this for this. In the Dark Tower books, they talk about how he is a certain kind of vampire. He's a where was it? I just read it. He is a Dark Tower, here it is. He is revealed as a Type 1 vampire, capable of hibernating for centuries and highly intelligent and cunning. And he looks younger than his self in the book, whereas this is just they wanted to go for a big creature effect thing for TV to shock them. But Barlow's characteristic of type of vampire is part of that, multiverse, Stephen King interconnected universe that we have. And we'll discuss like how it's very different played by Rutger Hauer in this other film. The actor who played him in this film, he had a long career going back to like the 60s with various different types of characters. He was in The Mark of the Devil and Star Trek and things like that, playing all sorts of... he was even Dracula's dog prior to this, which I think is very funny. That is a gem of a movie if you have ever seen it before. But he's also unfortunately on the list of many actors in this movie who have unfortunately passed away. I watched this for the first time on like the double VHS tapes that you used to be able to rent, and then I immediately got the Blu-ray just because I wanted to hear the commentary by Tobe Hooper talking through the whole 3 hours by himself, which is incredible. He goes into a lot of great details about behind the scenes and things like that. So I recommend finding that Blu-ray. Which is still pretty well in print, to hear Tobe talk about this whole movie, just because he was a auteur filmmaker, and hearing his commentary on films was to me like hearing Wes Craven talk about many different films. And the movie we'll get to in a couple weeks before the October 3rd release on Max. I don't know a lot about that director, so that will be interesting to explore some of his backstory. But I recommend Salem's Lot. I haven't seen it in years, probably since I got the Blu-ray, and when the Barlow pops up in the cell, I jumped immediately and screamed. I was just like, oh my god, I completely forgot that was going to happen. Obviously, that was like a big moment. And of course, the scene with the child in the window is very iconic and always listed as one of like the scariest movie moments of all time. Remember those old Bravo shows? And it's always on that list of like creepy vampire stuff. I like to think that they parodied that scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie with David Arquette's character, where he's just like, I'm hungry. And Luke Perry's like, you're funny, man. Like, I'm like, I saw that and I rewatched Buffy, and it just occurred to me, I'm like, wait a minute, that is a parody of Salem's Lot, just with a couple of comedic, adult actors and not a couple kids. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it in the upcoming film that we're going to watch. There's a TV series out there with Adrian Brody I haven't watched, which is like a prequel to this story. It's like like where does Salem's Lot come from, or Jerusalem's Lot? So I haven't had a chance to watch that yet, but I do know there was a TV Guide mini story that was printed when the 2004 version came out. So Stephen King has done some follow-ups around this before. Kind of sad. No Salem's Lot action figures out there from this movie. I've never seen a Barlow action figure from this. So we'll, something kind of missing. Maybe it's a matter of like it is the only thing marketable from the Stephen King movie, and Jack Torrance maybe. But still, let's face it, it's mostly it. So, but I think Barlow could use an action figure out there one day. I think that would be really cool, and he could come with like the diorama of his house, whatever, so he can recreate that huge thing. This was followed up by a terrible movie called Return to Salem's Lot, which I could barely sit through and rewatch, so I'm not giving a review of that. And that was by the Coen brothers, I think. So it was, no?
I don't know. I believe it is the screen debut of Tara Reid. I thought that was, yes.
Interesting. A Return to Salem's Lot, 1987.
Yes.
So, and the poster is just a black poster with a Return to Salem's Lot on it. I remember the vampires in this being very goofy looking too. But yeah, let's see.
Larry Cohen, not the Coen brothers.
Oh, okay, Larry Cohen, yes. Tara Reid. I have a funny story about Tara Reid. I met her once at a convention, and I was talking to her co-star from Sharknado, and I was just like, coincidentally enough, I have my Sharknado boxers on. He's like, no way, you have Sharknado boxers? I'm like, yes. He goes, I have to see those. And I was like, okay. So I undid it, showed him my Sharknado boxers. Tara Reid reached over and was like, what? You have Sharknado boxers on? She reached across her table to scribble her initials on my boxers. Little did I remember that. I unfortunately threw them right in the wash later on. God was the signature. So,
and I am correct. It is a feature film debut of Tara Reid.
That's fascinating. That's pretty funny. Go find the Blu-ray of this film. If you have watched this film before, watch it with Tobe Hooper's commentary. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. It is a lengthy film, so make sure you stay up for those whole 3 hours. And we'll be back in a couple weeks as we review the Rob Lowe version, directed by somebody who, again, I'm not too familiar with his bibliography, but I have a lot more memories of that to talk about, just because I've met several of the cast members. Like, subscribe, comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, check out Katie's channel as the blonde in front as well, and we'll be back to cover all of the Salem's Lot goodness here on the Radio of Horror over the next several weeks as we lead into the HBO Max movie.